Instructor Vreel adjusted his tertiary respiration device and regarded his multi-species survival class with what his kind considered smugness, a subtle wave across his see-through outer tissues. The learning chamber itself stood as a testament to universal design. Specialized pods for methane-dependent species, gravity-nullifying seating for high-density beings, and one perfectly standard chair for the solitary human learner who appeared thoroughly unimpressed. Today's task, the instructor announced through the translator module, will distinguish the superior hunters from the light harvesters. He paused dramatically, though the joke failed to resonate with students who actually did harvest light. You will capture the elusive Nexian predator. The announcement stirred considerable commotion. A crystalline entity briefly disintegrated in alarm before reassembling. Several gaseous pupils condensed visibly in dread. The human, however, merely extracted what looked like an outdated paper journal, a fact that caused the instructor's membranes to quiver with irritation. The Nexian predator, the instructor continued, is renowned for its multiple sensory organs, natural camouflage abilities, and particularly delectable flesh. Your assignment is to capture one within the designated hunting zone. You have several Earth rotations, he emphasized Earth, while pointedly glancing at the human, clearly anticipating fear or dismay. Instead, the human was drawing something. Instructor Vreel drifted closer. Perhaps our Earth colleague would care to share their thoughts on confronting a creature that has evolved to evade the galaxy's most advanced hunting technology. The human glanced up, pencil still moving. Just calculating some figures on tension strength and bait positioning, though. I should probably account for the local gravitational field, too. A brief silence followed. By the way, are they attracted to sweet or savory aromas? The question appeared to unsettle the instructor. His membrane rippled in what might have been confusion. They prefer fermented vegetation, but that's hardly relevant when— Perfect, the human interrupted, still writing. And their typical velocity during pursuit? Around the classroom, other students began paying attention. A collective consciousness cluster in the corner vibrated with amusement. The methane-breathing pair in their shared enclosure exchanged what could have been bewildered looks, difficult to determine with their visual stalks. The instructor's coloration deepened with annoyance. Extremely fast, but you're missing the point. The Nexian predator isn't merely swift, it's intelligent. It can detect and avoid most known forms of— So, about average sprinting speed, the human muttered, apparently to themselves. Yes, that aligns with the muscle mass I'd expect from the anatomical diagrams. A gelatinous student extended a pseudopod. Instructor, perhaps we should review the conventional hunting methods that have proven unsuccessful? Excellent suggestion. The instructor seized the opportunity, his membrane smoothing. Let us examine why even the most technologically advanced societies have struggled to capture these creatures. First, their ability to detect energy weapons. Quick question, the human interrupted again, now sketching what resembled a series of circles and lines. These creatures, they're territorial, correct? Mark their boundaries. Well, yes, and they follow regular feeding patterns during the third moonrise. How did you— The instructor's translator crackled with frustration. That's classified information from the Galactic Hunter Guild. The human looked up, blinking innocently. Oh, apologies. I just deduced it from their skeletal architecture and nutritional requirements. You can determine quite a lot from jaw alignment and digestive tract length. A pause. Also, I might have perused some earlier research papers. Your campus archive has a fascinating xenobiology section. By now, the entire class was observing this exchange like an engaging competition. The collective consciousness cluster had divided into individual units for improved viewing angles. Even the typically disinterested quantum probability student had collapsed their wave function to attend fully. The instructor's membranes were now undulating so rapidly they generated slight air currents. Perhaps, he said with what he hoped was devastating sarcasm, you'd like to instruct the class about Nexian predator hunting techniques? Oh, no thank you, the human replied cheerfully, closing their notebook. I think I'll just improvise as I go. Though, they looked around at their classmates. Anyone interested in helping carry back the catch is welcome to join me. Might need additional hands or pseudopods or probability fields. The instructor's translator produced a sound remarkably like a scoff. You seem exceedingly confident for someone from a species that barely mastered faster-than-light travel. The human stood, tucking away their notebook. Instructor, with all due respect, my species didn't spend countless generations becoming apex predators by using energy weapons. They smiled, a gesture that somehow managed to display too many teeth while remaining perfectly polite. Sometimes, the traditional approaches work best. As the human departed, the quantum probability student flickered rapidly between existential states, calculating success odds. The instructor noticed with concern that the numbers differed from his expectations. The collective consciousness cluster had already begun taking wagers. The designated hunting zone extended across vast hectares of artificially maintained wilderness, demonstrating the Academy's dedication to authentic training environments. Most students had promptly deployed their advanced equipment. Scanner. Drones hummed overhead. Quantum detection fields rippled across the landscape, and at least 3 different species were attempting to phase shift into higher dimensions for improved observation. The human, meanwhile, was gathering branches. "Your primitive collection behavior is fascinating," commented a floating sphere of pure energy who had been observing for some time. "Is this some form of pre-hunt ritual?" "Not really," the human replied, testing the flexibility of a particularly long limb. "Just gathering materials. Say, would you be able to help carry some of these? Your electromagnetic field could prove quite useful." The energy being fluctuated in what might have been surprise. "You wish to employ my fundamental force manipulation for transporting branches?" "Well, when you phrase it like that, it sounds less impressive." The human grinned, already beginning to strip bark from the collected wood. "But yes, essentially, I'll make it worthwhile." Curiosity, it seemed, transcended species boundaries. The energy being began assisting, albeit with frequent commentary regarding the peculiar inefficiency of physical matter manipulation. Over the subsequent hours, students gravitated toward the increasingly bizarre preparation process. The human had established what appeared to be an elaborate network of primitive mechanisms across a carefully selected clearing. Vines and stripped bark became cordage. Fallen logs were transformed into counterweights. Simple mechanical advantages emerged from seemingly random collections of materials. The methane-breathing pair, having abandoned their atmospheric disturbance technique after accidentally generating a small whirlwind, floated closer to observe. "What purpose does this arrangement serve?" they asked in synchronized harmony. "Our instruments detect no energy signatures." "That's intentional," the human explained, carefully adjusting what looked like a gravity-triggered trap. "Sometimes, the most effective technology is no technology at all," a crystalline student refracted thoughtfully. "But how will you detect the Nexian predator without sensors?" The human pointed to several distinct markings in the soil. "They are creatures of habit. See these tracks? This represents a regular patrol route. And those scratches on the trees? Territorial markers. They're communicating everything we need to know." The collective consciousness cluster, which had been maintaining ongoing commentary on the proceedings, suddenly unified in comprehension. "You are exploiting their own behavioral patterns against them." Among other things, the human agreed, now assembling what appeared to be a series of primitive alarm systems using hollow wood pieces and small stones. "But that's merely one component. The real strategy involves thinking like prey." This statement generated considerable confusion among the assembled students. The quantum probability student actually destabilized momentarily. "Elaborate," demanded the energy being who had become surprisingly invested in the process. The human stepped back, surveying their work. "Most hunters think like predators. They focus on attack methods, on overcoming. But prey species," they gestured at the seemingly random arrangement of traps and triggers, "prey species must be smarter. They must understand both predator and prey. They must anticipate every possibility because they cannot afford mistakes." A gelatinous student oozed forward. "But humans are predators. Your evolutionary history. We're both, the human interrupted, checking tension on a particularly complex cordage system. We hunted, yes, but we also were hunted extensively. We learned from both perspectives. And more importantly, they added, retrieving their notebook again, we learned to hunt more intelligently, not merely more forcefully. As daylight diminished, the human's preparation site had transformed into something defying simple classification. It was simultaneously rudimentary and sophisticated, an interconnected web of mechanisms that somehow covered all possible approach vectors while remaining virtually undetectable to advanced scanning equipment. The instructor, who had been monitoring from a distance with increasing concern, finally approached. "This is not standard hunting methodology," he stated, membranes rippling with disapproval. "No," agreed the human cheerfully. "It's superior." They were now establishing what appeared to be a cooking station complete with a stone-lined pit and a collection of local herbs. "Anyone interested in learning how to prepare a proper feast?" The instructor's translator crackled with indignation. "You haven't even captured anything yet." "True," the human conceded, arranging kindling with suspicious expertise. "But I will, and when I do, everyone's invited to dinner." This statement generated a wave of excitement through the gathered students. The collective consciousness cluster immediately began calculating optimal feast configurations. The methane-breathing pair started researching compatible digestive modifications. Even the quantum probability student seemed to be considering maintaining stable form long enough to participate in a meal. As darkness fell, the human continued working, explaining each step with patience that gradually attracted more and more students. They learned about leverage, about prey animal psychology, about terrain significance. The energy being found itself fascinated by the elegant simplicity of mechanical advantage. The crystalline student discovered an unexpected appreciation for the refractive properties of carefully positioned water droplets. "But what if the creature doesn't follow the anticipated path?" asked one of the methane-breathing pair. The human's smile took on a distinctly predatory edge. "That's the beauty of it. There is no single anticipated path. Every approach has been accounted for. Every possible route leads to the same outcome. It's not about forcing the creature to go where we want. It's about making every choice it might make work to our advantage." The instructor, still observing, felt his membranes ripple with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. "You seem very certain of success," he remarked. "Instructor," the human replied, applying finishing touches to what appeared to be a completely innocuous patch of ground. "My species spent countless generations perfecting the art of capturing things that were larger, faster, and stronger than ourselves. We discovered that the best trap isn't the most complicated one. It's the one your prey doesn't recognize as a trap at all." As if to emphasize this point, they casually tossed a small fruit into what appeared to be an empty space between two trees. The resulting cascade of mechanisms was so swift and silent that even the quantum probability student struggled to track all movements. The instructor's coloration shifted to a shade suggesting he was reconsidering several life choices. "Now," the human said, turning to address the gathered students, "who wants to learn about the art of marinade preparation?" The night proceeded with an impromptu lesson in culinary chemistry that had even the non-organic students taking notes. The human explained how different compounds could break down proteins, how certain herbs could complement and enhance natural flavors, and how proper preparation was equally important as the hunt itself. "But surely," the energy being observed, "all this additional effort is inefficient." "Efficiency isn't everything," the human replied, carefully mixing several local plants into a paste. "Sometimes the journey holds equal importance to the destination. Besides," they added with a wink, "good food brings people together, or beings or collective consciousness constructs." The collective consciousness cluster vibrated in appreciation of this inclusive terminology. As the third moonrise approached, the clearing had transformed into an unlikely combination of hunting ground and outdoor kitchen. The human's traps remained invisible to both casual observation and advanced scanning equipment, while the cooking preparation area emitted an aroma that had several species modifying their olfactory receptors for enhanced appreciation. It's nearly time, the human announced, checking their primitive timepiece. Anyone wishing to observe should probably secure a good vantage point, preferably elevated and out of the way. The students, now thoroughly invested in the outcome, began positioning themselves around the clearing. The energy being created a viewing platform for some smaller species. The collective consciousness cluster split into optimal viewing formations. Even the instructor found himself a suitable observation point, though he maintained an air of skeptical dignity. The humans stood in the center of their preparation area, appearing completely relaxed despite the approaching deadline. One more thing, they added casually. If anyone records what's about to happen, I'd appreciate a copy. My family back home enjoys a good hunting story. The anticipation in the clearing was palpable. The quantum probability students' calculations approached unprecedented certainty levels. The methane-breathing pair had synchronized their respiration to minimize atmospheric disturbance. The crystalline being had adjusted their refraction index for optimal viewing clarity. And in the darkness beyond the clearing, something moved. Did they calculate the air currents? One of the methane-breathing pair asked in awe. And the pollen dispersion patterns? Confirmed the other. The crystalline student recorded everything through multiple refraction angles. The mechanical advantage. Calculations are flawless. Each trigger mechanism builds upon the energy of the previous one. The instructor's coloration had shifted to a shade previously unknown to xenobiologists. The creature, thoroughly enraged, made one final escape attempt. It charged directly at the human, who had yet to move from their central position. Several students gasped, or their species equivalent. The quantum probability student briefly split into multiple timelines. The human smiled. The charge triggered the final sequence. A complex series of counterweights and pulleys activated in perfect synchronization. The ground beneath the creature suddenly wasn't as solid as it had appeared. Natural materials arranged with unnatural precision worked harmoniously to accomplish what advanced technology had failed to achieve. In moments, the mighty Nexian predator found itself suspended in a net of vines and stripped bark, hanging inverted and thoroughly immobilized. The human finally moved, casually approaching to inspect their catch. Perfect, they announced. Didn't damage a single critical area. The meat will be excellent. The clearing erupted in excitement. The collective consciousness cluster split into celebratory patterns, the energy being produced harmonics of pure joy. The methane-breathing pair performed an intricate aerial dance. Even the quantum probability student maintained singular form long enough to express appreciation. The instructor floated forward, his membranes rippling with complex emotions. How did you know it would work? The human was already beginning to lower the creature with careful control of the counterweight system. Simple observation and fundamental physics. Well, that and countless generations of evolutionary experience in finding clever ways to catch dinner. But the complexity of the trap network. Actually, you're mistaken, instructor, the human said, now checking the creature's vital signs with practiced efficiency. The complexity was illusion. Each individual mechanism was incredibly simple. They merely worked together in a way that made the whole greater than the sum of its parts. They paused, then added with a grin. Rather like a good class project, wouldn't you say? The crystalline student refracted thoughtfully. You used our assumptions against us. We sought complexity because that's what we expected. Exactly. The human was now preparing their previously arranged processing area. The best solutions aren't always the most technologically advanced ones. Sometimes they're simply those that work best with available resources. The energy being floated closer, fascinated by the methodical preparation. Your species developed these techniques without advanced technology? Correct, the human replied, expertly beginning to process their catch. We weren't the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species on our planet. We needed creativity. They looked up with another too-many-teeth smile. Still do occasionally. The instructor, uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. You mentioned earlier that everyone was invited to dinner. Naturally, the human gestured to their elaborate cooking setup. That's why I ensured capturing one of the larger specimens. Plenty for everyone, though, they added thoughtfully. We might need adjustments for different digestive systems. Any volunteers? To assist with preparation? What followed was perhaps the most unusual culinary instruction in the Academy's history. The human demonstrated various preparation techniques, explaining how different cuts could be modified for different species' needs. The energy being helped regulate temperature. The crystalline student discovered natural talent for precise cutting. The collective consciousness cluster excelled at coordinating various cooking stations. Even the instructor found himself drawn into the process, scientific curiosity overcoming earlier skepticism. The chemical reactions during cooking are fascinating, he admitted, watching the human explain heat application principles to eager students. Food is chemistry, the human agreed, carefully adjusting seasonings. But it's also art and, more importantly, something that brings beings together. As the feast began, the clearing transformed yet again. What started as hunting ground became trap network, then processing station, and now an impromptu interspecies banquet. Students who had never shared meals found themselves exchanging stories and observations. The methane-breathing pair discovered certain cuts, properly prepared, could safely metabolize in their unique digestive system. The energy being found, it could absorb specific wavelengths from the cooking process. Even the quantum probability student maintained coherence long enough to experience something approximating taste. This, declared the collective consciousness cluster, having synchronized their taste receptors for maximum appreciation, surpasses standard nutrient absorption. The human, watching classmates enjoy their work, smiled genuinely. Food always tastes better when shared, they said, and when you've worked for it. The instructor, initially maintaining dignified distance from festivities, finally approached the human. I must admit, he said, membranes rippling with what might have been embarrassment. I may have underestimated your species' capabilities. No offense taken, the human replied, offering a specially prepared portion. We're accustomed to being underestimated. Makes surprising others more satisfying. As the feast continued under triple moonlight, students from diverse species engaged in conversations transcending typical classroom interactions. The energy being discussed trap physics with the crystalline student. The methane-breathing pair exchanged recipe ideas with the collective consciousness cluster. The quantum probability. Student calculated flavor combination statistics. And at the center, the human continued cooking, sharing and teaching, transforming a difficult hunting assignment into something more significant. A reminder that sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the most complex, and that the best lessons often arrive with unexpected accompaniments. The instructor, observing this unfold, mentally noted curriculum revisions. Perhaps traditional techniques merited reconsideration. Though he would never admit it, he anticipated next term's hunting assignment. He sensed the human would provide additional surprises. News of the human's hunting success spread through the Academy's neural networks, quantum communicators, and conventional exchanges faster than light through vacuum. By the next session, the lecture hall overflowed with curious observers from other departments, some manifesting from parallel dimensions for first-hand accounts. The instructor, demonstrating remarkable adaptation for a being primarily composed of semi-permeable membranes, transformed the incident into an impromptu lecture on alternative hunting methodologies. As we witnessed yesterday, he announced, membranes rippling enthusiastically. Effectiveness doesn't always correlate with technological advancement. He paused. Would our human colleague care to elaborate on their methodology? The human, sketching apparent new trap designs, looked up. I could present formally, they offered, though demonstrating basic principles might prove more interesting. Does anyone have string? What followed was masterful instruction in fundamental technology that had even advanced AI students reevaluating their basic programming. The human demonstrated simple machines, explaining how leverage multiplies force, how friction functions as both ally and adversary, and how understanding these principles accomplishes tasks that even quantum manipulation sometimes struggles with. The key, they explained, using writing implements to demonstrate torque, is working with natural laws rather than attempting to overcome them. Everything follows patterns. Even the most sophisticated creatures possess basic instincts and predictable responses. A theoretical physics student raised a probability field. But surely advanced technology offers greater reliability. The human grinned. Does it? When did your quantum phase shifter last require updating? When did your gravitational manipulator experience power failure? They displayed their makeshift demonstration tools. These never need charging. They lack bugs requiring fixes. They simply work when you understand their application. The collective consciousness cluster, expanded to include several new nodes interested in the subject, vibrated with revelation. Your species developed these principles through necessity. Precisely, the human replied, using their notebook to explain geometric principles. When you cannot overpower something, you must outthink it. Every limitation becomes an opportunity for innovation. The energy being, experimenting with physical manipulation since the previous hunt, manifested several simple machines using its electromagnetic field. The elegance of mechanical advantage is undeniable, it observed. We may have overlooked fundamental efficiencies pursuing complexity. The instructor's color indicated agreement. Perhaps, he suggested, we should incorporate more traditional techniques into our curriculum. Better yet, the human said, sketching what resembled plans for an outdoor teaching area. Why not combine approaches? No rule prohibits using advanced technology alongside basic principles. This statement generated excitement waves through the assembled beings. The quantum probability student achieved perfect certainty briefly, a departmental record. The crystalline student, refracting light through various angles to study demonstrations aligned into comprehension. You're suggesting methodological synthesis. Consider it, the human continued, their enthusiasm contagious. Combine simple machine reliability with quantum measurement precision. Use artificial intelligence to calculate optimal leverage positions. Apply advanced material science to improve traditional designs. They grinned. The possibilities are limitless. The instructor's membranes undulated so rapidly they created localized atmospheric disturbances. This could revolutionize our entire approach to survival training. And beyond survival training, added one methane-breathing twin. Applications across multiple disciplines, completed the other. The human nodded, still sketching. Every field has first principles, fundamental truths unchanging regardless of technological advancement. Sometimes returning to basics reveals new progression paths. The lecture hall transformed into a vibrant hub of interdisciplinary discussion. Engineering students debated material strengths with biology specialists. Physics theorists consulted. Practical craftspeople. The collective consciousness cluster drafted proposals for cross-department research. There's another matter requiring discussion, the instructor announced, his coloration indicating formal acknowledgement. The hunting assignment was intended as individual challenge, but what we witnessed transcends that. The human looked up from their sketching. The feast, you mean? Indeed. The instructor's membranes rippled thoughtfully. You didn't merely complete the assignment. You transformed it into community building and knowledge-sharing opportunity. Well, naturally, the human replied as though self-evident. What value has success without sharing? Besides, they added characteristically, everything improves with good food and good company, the energy being pulsed agreement. The shared meal facilitated unprecedented interspecies communication and understanding. Not to mention, added the crystalline student, practical demonstrations of chemical and physical principles during preparation. The quantum probability student flickered before stabilizing. The statistical improbability of such diverse species finding common ground through shared sustenance makes the event more significant. The instructor raised his primary appendages for attention. Which brings us to an important announcement. The faculty has established a new course for next term. Integrated Survival Techniques, Traditional Methods in Modern Context. He turned to the human. We would be honored if you would consider a teaching assistant position. The human's expression registered surprise. Me teach? Who better? The instructor asked. You've demonstrated ability making complex principles accessible to diverse species, and your practical experience would prove invaluable. The collective consciousness cluster vibrated enthusiastically. We have already calculated significant increase in cross-species understanding potential. The humans surveyed the lecture hall, noting eager faces and equivalent sensory organs of fellow students. Well, they said slowly, I do have ideas for improving the hunting grounds, and perhaps we could establish regular communal meals. The approval wave nearly overloaded the Academy's emotion-dampening fields. As excitement settled into productive discussion groups, the instructor approached the human. I must confess, he said quietly, when you first enrolled, I harbored doubts. Most do, the human replied good-naturedly. We're accustomed to it. But now I understand something fundamental about your species, the instructor continued, membranes rippling with sincere appreciation. You don't merely survive, you discover ways to thrive, and you include others. The human smiled, but unlike the predatory expression during the hunt, this conveyed warmth and inclusion. That's possibly our most defining characteristic. They agreed. We've always excelled when sharing knowledge and learning from others. Looking around the lecture hall where students across the galaxy eagerly exchanged ideas and planned collaborations, this assessment seemed irrefutable. What began as simple hunting assignment evolved into something far more valuable. A reminder that sometimes the most advanced civilizations learn from the simplest solutions, and progress doesn't always mean abandoning tradition. As the human explained basic knot techniques to increasingly fascinated non-corporeal entities, the instructor made a final teaching record entry. Perhaps the most valuable lessons aren't always those we intend to teach. The quantum probability student running final calculations determined the likelihood of this event significantly influencing interspecies. Education's future approached certainty. For once, they didn't mind being predictable.